right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another Learning Tech Talks, where we're exploring the landscape of learning tech. But today, we're going to be getting into a very spirited topic. We're going to be connecting skills to jobs and then talking about what the heck collaborative learning has to do with that and so much more. But to navigate this conversation with me, I am joined by learning celebrity David James, the Chief Learning Officer over at 360 Learning. So I'm so glad we finally hit record because we were just jamming, and David, you're the one that's like, we just better hit record or we're just going to have this whole conversation. So thanks for joining me on this one.
Thanks, Christopher. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Yeah, well, it's been a while. So we've done this together twice over the last 4 years. Since you were my first guest, actually. You were the very first guest on Learning Tech Talks. So let's talk a little bit about this. For those of you who don't know, definitely check out David James's content. He's got some great stuff on helping people think about learning. But give me a little foray into kind of the backdrop of, because you were with Loop when we first talked. You had a background in L&D from Disney and you went to Loop, and then you're at 360 Learning now. So I'd love to just get some insight into what that journey's looked like for you.
Yeah, absolutely, Christopher. I mean, it was it's quite the whirlwind. So it's brilliant. It's brilliant just to spend a couple.
And you
of
did
moments.
It all during COVID too.
I know. Yeah, it was a strange time, wasn't it? But
it was a very strange time.
So we started speaking with the folks at 360 Learning because they were one of the very few. I wouldn't even say they were competitors because we operated in different geographies at the time, but they were the only ones really doing what we were doing, which is at Loop, like just the potted history. We were creating the learning tech I wish I had at Disney because we had the standard LMS filled full of generic content, and we couldn't get people to use it because obviously it didn't offer any value because it didn't speak to anybody's jobs. So with Loop, it was. We were trying to solve the problem of it's the strange. There's the problem of L&D, and then there's the problem of the organization. The problem with L&D was how do you get people to use the tech? And it's really easy because you just have to solve the problems of the people. And you solve the problems of the people and why they are in the organization, and bang, you get the engagement. But
it happens in and of itself.
It does, yeah. So when you're solving actual problems and helping people to do the things they're expected to do, but when they need the help, and specifically with what they're doing, rather than providing them with the stuff that we want them to do when we want them to do it, it's flipping it around, then engagement is the least of your problems.
It's funny because it's an inverted pyramid in the sense that so often we're chasing, here's what we think is really important. How do we convince everybody else that what we think is really important, instead of going, no, that's not how you get there. You get there by understanding what's really important to them and what are they trying to do, then fix that, and you'll solve your engagement problem in and of itself.
Exactly. So then a lot of voices saying the same thing, Christopher. So that's when we started speaking with the folks at 360, and they were talking to us because they'd just raised, I think it was $240 million, the biggest single raise at the time from a learning tech company. So they were looking for
to augment
complementary
their
tech
portfolio. There you go.
That's right. Yeah. And so we were the first company that they acquired. So we went from Loop, which was a handful of folks that have been growing this thing since 2015 and grown completely from a standing start, no revenue to what we were. It was we thought we'd done pretty well, but it is like
you leapfrogged.
Leapfrogs. Yeah. I woke up a few years later and everything's 10 times bigger.
Like we said, Rip Van Winkle.
You went
to sleep and you woke up and you're like, what happened to me?
Exactly. That was one hell of a bout of COVID to have knocked me out for that long. So it's 10 times the employees, 10 times as many customers, 10 times the revenue, and they've got this enormous backing, and it's just a case of there's no reason why we can't move fast to fully own our space, and then become one of the big dominant players in the market. So I mean and that's the beautiful part of that. What was that like? It's a thrill to build something from scratch to a multi-million pound or dollar business, but then
Yeah.
it's one hell of a ride. Then it's like going from, you know, one roller coaster and you're going around the corners going whoa, right, then all of a sudden it's like whoa.
Yeah.
Like, because you've got this backing, you've got this momentum.
Yeah, a
So
lot of the problems, and again, it's different situations because I've been in both, and it's different situations, but they're both roller coasters because that
yeah,
startup feel, there's challenges and there's things that are super exciting, and then to suddenly wake up the next morning and now all of a sudden you're on this other roller coaster that has completely different challenges, but some of the challenges you were facing before, it's like, whoa, they're gone. Like we don't have to
that's
deal with
right.
that anymore, and now you're accelerating over here. Super
Yeah.
cool.
That's,
Okay.
yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, so we've gone from feeling every bump in the road, and sometimes, you know, our pants scraping on the tarmac, like to being up in the sky. So yeah, it's a very different feeling.
I just have the visual of this running through my head. So my apologies on that. Well, and so here's the thing that I've been following 360 for a while.
Mm,
And one of the things that I really thought, and the timing, honestly, of what they're doing has been really profound in that the LMS market has been kind of polarized in many regards. And there's been a handful of like just super dominant players
mm,
that were the big names that everybody knew that kind of, you know, and then there were a bunch of other ones that were kind of a spectrum all over the place.
mm,
And it was like something dynamic changed in the market where all of a sudden some of those big players, they were really getting disrupted by things.
mm,
And it opened opportunity for some really cool innovation, which is weird to say innovation in the LMS space sometimes. You're like,
mm,
well, but I saw 360 do a great job of capitalizing on that. And they are bringing a different flavor
mm,
to this game. But it was like the perfect storm. The timing of things, of what was happening, what they were doing, suddenly brought opportunity for another big player to come into the mix and
mm.
actually compete. And I feel like that was something that had not happened in a long time. There were a lot of players kind of down here trying to jump up, but there was almost this ceiling they couldn't hit. And it seems like 360's really kind of crashed through that.
Yeah, I really think so, Christopher. And if I look at this from a lens of leading L&D functions in company, from the moment I saw LMSs, or no, maybe not saw, but when I became responsible for driving engagement in it, my questions were, who on earth has chosen this, and how on earth do I get people to use this in the organization? It was almost as if the vendors or the procurers of that got something that we all didn't get, and this was from them down. And so we're trying to sell this thing that no one's buying.
Yeah.
And these big voices are telling us, well, it's because it's not embedded, and then you get to, I know that's you're laughing.
You got to
Like,
gamify it. If you just,
oh, I know.
get the right integration, then people will love it. You know, all
It's
these
not
other things.
interactive enough, or all it was is that there's another reason why
You need a shiny
people
front
haven't
door
got it.
on it. If you put a shiny front door on it, then it'll work.
I know, yeah. So that's the crazy part of it. But then from a practitioner's perspective, it is a completely different game. This is why I totally got 360, because instead of telling people they don't get it, you're engaging in a conversation about what they actually need, and that's the collaborative learning element of that. This isn't anything new. We've talked about social learning for a long time, but I think that we are and what 360 have capitalized on is that the technology is finally ready to build these loops. I was going to say feedback loops, but it's almost like these workflows that engages people in the right ways to determine what it is they need when they need it, who else has that expertise in the organization, and then capture that so that it is usable for others. So this does build on the work of a lot of my heroes in learning and development and mentors, whether it be Bob Mosier and Conrad Gottfredson. How close to the moment of need can you get to influence the moment of apply? I know we've debated that many a time. Guy Wallace talking about performance. We should be performance oriented, and so all of this, I suppose, in a nutshell, is that if LMSs began in education, and they were an administrative tool to
Yeah. It was
that
like
captured.
they kind of began, you have a bunch of stuff
Mm,
that you need to manage,
yeah,
hence the name. Let's just build a thing that manages that.
yeah,
And that's a different conversation than we're trying to, like you said, work through this workflow, which
mm,
really I talk a lot about learning. We're like a product development
yeah,
organization, or we should think of ourselves that way. And that's very different than we got a bunch of stuff. We got to just organize it and make it accessible versus,
mm,
hey, we've got problems, skill and people problems, and you need to develop products to solve those problems.
yeah.
That's just a fundamentally different way of looking at the technology.
Completely. And every time I have a conversation with somebody who's been in education and then pivoted over to corporate learning, they will tell me it's completely different. It's fundamentally different. But I think that we've got too many voices in learning and development that look at it and think, well, it's just like education. You
Academics.
just
Yeah.
so you just need a lot of content. You need that categorized and you need that surfaced at the right time. And if it's not working now, then we just need to find ways of surfacing that in
Yep.
another way. And you're thinking, can we just pause for a moment and wonder whether we've actually got this wrong? Because as you said, this is about activating people and equipping them to do the stuff that they're recognized to do. I mean, you and I,
Yeah.
we've climbed the corporate ladder. We kind of know how that works. And neither of us were promoted for what we did or what we learned. No, so what we know and what we learned. It's what you did, right? And this
Yep.
is the beast that we're playing with. It's corporate learning. How's this different? Corporate life is fundamentally different, and there is so much hard stuff within to be able to do. And all of us have our ebbs and our flows. And sometimes you ride the crest of a wave, and sometimes you wonder whether you can do another day of this bloody job. But
That's why we have similar haircuts.
exactly. It all fell here. And they're all graying. But when you get to the nub of, so what are the problems that you're trying to solve? And I'll pause for a moment here, but you see how collaborative learning is much more of the
Yeah.
answer, when you realize that so much of what we are invited in, or what we're expected in our organizations to achieve, emanates from the question, how do I do the right stuff here?
Yep.
Right.
How do I
And then
spend
you've
my
got
time
all
on
the
the right
stuff that
things?
comes from the culture that isn't just like how Janice does over there or what Bobby does over there. This is everything that's from our leadership, our hierarchies, our processes, our systems, our technologies, our customers, our colleagues, and everything. You cannot remove the development element of what we do from the culture. And that's why that I think that there was this big opportunity for 360 learning and collaborative learning. The tech enables it now, but also to solve the real problems that need solving, and not this engineered one, which is, but how do I get people to use the technology that I've spent $2
Well,
million
and what's
on?
funny that you bring this up is that, there's two things that you talked about that I think really are worth calling out on this, in that
Mm,
there is a huge difference between education and corporate learning. I mean, it's a distinctly different space. Now, I'll be the first to say I've been in many conversations where I'm like, I think education could take a nudge from corporate learning in terms of that. But
mm,
when you even just think about the environment and what you're trying to accomplish, it's very different in an academic environment. The
yeah,
goal is education, and you have rigor, and it's this, you need to just do these things. There isn't a,
mm,
well, I don't know, that's not really the way it works here. It's like, well, that's what you're here to do. Like, we
mm,
tell you the way it works because you're here. Versus in corporate learning, it's like, you're doing your job. Like, it doesn't
yeah,
go according to plan 9 times out of 10 in that sense. And I think that's
mm.
a really important distinction when we think about this, in terms of it's a completely fundamentally different set that we're trying to attack.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and again, it's really hard to compare the two because they have such different reasons for
Yes.
being. And I think, I'm a big lover of education, and I'd love to have spent more time in education for the opportunity to be inspired, to ruminate, to develop my own critical thinking. But the margins for failure, I think, are broader within that. I mean, you've got to get your stuff done, but this is big room for
I mean, that
education.
is your job. Like, when you
Yeah.
think about it, when you're going into education, or when you're in education, that is your job.
Mm,
So of course, that's where you're spending your time. When you think about corporate learning, oftentimes this is a means to an end in many regards. It's a different dynamic.
Yeah, totally. Because it's not just a case of absorb this stuff and here you go. You've also got to get along with your colleagues. And oh, and I didn't tell you there that you've joined this team, but we don't really get on with that team. But we still
Right.
got to work with that team. You know.
Right.
You know.
Oh, and by the
You know,
way, don't tick off this guy, because if you tick off this guy, it's all going to blow up type of it. Right. I mean, there's a whole
yeah.
lot of other dynamics you're dealing with.
Yeah, completely. So you imagine like so again like you've got one way of doing learning tech, which is fill a platform full of content that wasn't designed to help people in the organization, but it was around the technical aspects and perhaps some of the generic interpersonal aspects that you still need to apply. Or you've got this other way, which is everything that's in that platform relates to what goes on here and has helped people or has been designed to help people in order to do more of the right stuff so that they're more successful and we're more successful. But we stripped out the fluff, and that's going to help you for starters. And now the first part is I want to talk about the structure of this organization and how it is designed the way it is and how you navigate that. It's almost like you unpack it so people can touch it. So people can. Nick Shackleton-Jones talks about the usability of an organization, and I love that because they're not designed to be used. The complexities of humans, we usually mess things up to such an extent that we need a manual in order to make that work. I remember when I was at Disney, and I'd only been there a few weeks, and this HR business partner came over to me and said, "Oh, could you run a course or design a course on a matrix organization?" And I went, "What's a matrix organization?" And she was like, "You work in one?" I was like, "All right, okay." Like, "Oh, it's good to know." Like, so then I'm like, "How do I find out about this?" And then you go, and then you start reading up about it and go, "Oh my God, this doesn't make sense. You're competing for resources." Like, but all of a sudden the lights have been switched on, and then you're like, "Oh, this is mad." But why aren't I taught about that? Why are we not taught about that?
Well, and
Like,
I think what's funny about this, I'm trying to remember which episode I had this conversation on, but this is where I see this stuff fall flat so often is corporate work. There's almost like, have you ever eaten at In-N-Out?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay.
I've
They
not heard
have
of
a
it.
hidden menu. They have a hidden menu. Okay. And it's true. And if you go there, go to California, order the animal fries or something like that. But there's this whole hidden menu of things. And so often this is the dynamic that I see when it comes to workplace learning is it's like, well, yeah, here's what you need to know. But then there's really what you need to know.
Yeah.
And nobody ever talks about, like, this is like this hidden knowledge that leaves people going like, okay, so I did the thing, but this is not helping me get anything done. It's like, oh, well, did you get the animal fries? Did you order it with did you do all the, how would I know about that? Oh, well, you got to know the data. It's like this hidden network of things. And it's really unfortunate because there's a lot of people struggling in their roles because they're trying to operate off like the architecture blueprints, but there's a bunch of invisible ink on it and they weren't given the glasses to see the invisible ink. And they're like, I went from point A to B and I am not landing at the destination. And it's like, oh, well, actually there's a whole bunch of other stuff in between that you missed.
Yeah, well, I mean, when people are hired into new roles, especially senior roles, they're not hired on the premise that there's a huge chance they might fail and we won't support them in the organization. But I remember meeting people at Disney, and you have your one-to-one, your meet and greet, and you meet for the first time, and they say, "Yeah, I've been brought in to disrupt, to shake things up." And as they talk, I'm thinking, "Oh, crikey, you're not going to be here long," right? And they're not going to be here long. But that's because there's no manual, and if they're willing to listen, that's where you'd go. I tell you what, let's go grab a coffee. You put your arm around them and go, right. This is decision by consensus, right? Your currency is your profile, right? The way you build your profile is that you need to be political, but not manipulative. But there will be people who are manipulative, and the people who don't want to play the game, those are the ones that fail. This is your access to power, so all of that stuff, right?
It's the hidden menu. It's the
hidden menu, right? But there are people who are brought in. I mean, I don't know what it's like in the US, but a recruitment agency will charge 20%. I think it's about 20% of the value of a senior hire. mate, we're talking big
Oh,
money.
big
And
bucks.
and so if what we're not doing is saying this is our organization. And now, don't get me wrong, if I was going to if I was going to join an organization tomorrow and they gave me an authoring tool and they said, right, write down what people need to know, I wouldn't have a clue. This stuff builds up over time. You solve this surface issues, you try to find out what the root is, and then like every time you solve a problem, something else comes up, but there is some stuff screaming out that needs
Yeah.
immediate attention that you need to get out there. And so this is how it comes. But I think the really important part of this part of the conversation, before we get into the nuts and bolts of, yeah, but how do you do that digitally, is you have to know what the problems are. And if you're intent
Yeah.
on understanding the problems and intent on solving the problems, these are the really important and hard
Well,
conversations you need to have.
yeah, and they are very difficult conversations, and I
Mm,
think that's sometimes why people shy away from them. I mean, I can
mm,
say organization after organization after organization. I'm not the most popular person in the room for a very long
no,
time because it's one of these like, I get it, pretend I'm an idiot, like tell me why this matters. Like I need to understand
mm,
what's really going, and it's like just do it. And it's like
yeah,
I can't because I need to break this down. But I think the other thing that you hit on the importance of digging into the problem. I think the other piece too, and this ties to this collaborative learning piece, is you also have to know who has the hidden menu type
yeah,
of a thing and figuring out there are people in your organization that they know this hidden menu. They've
yeah,
got the hidden menu. They know what the right things are. And the challenge with that is you look at, I love this term, the gray tsunami, right?
right,
That's about to just wipe out a lot of organizations where it's like, you've got a lot of intellectual capital in your company and they know the hidden menu
yeah,
and they've got the details on how work actually gets done and how to navigate this so that somebody doesn't walk in and go, I quit. Like this, I just
mm,
can't. I did 1 + 1 and it keeps equaling 4 and I can't figure it out. And those people are going to go
mm,
and you're going to be left with a really big mess to try
yeah,
and solve for. And that's concerning for a lot of organizations. And that conversation is not getting enough airtime. There's a lot of talk
mm,
about skills, but it's like, yeah, but there are people who have these skills, who have built these skills over decades of
mm.
figuring these things out. And they're going to just up and walk out, and you're going to have no idea what's lost.
Yeah, that's right. And you realize it wasn't just about skills. This was about networks. This was about people. This was about being able to be plugged into the organization. I think Laszlo Bock talks about this in Work Rules, that we can that we overvalue or perhaps we oversimplify somebody's ability to do a job and think that they are. I think that it was in the context of someone being self-made. No one in any organization has done that on their own. The most successful people in your organization have been able to work with a group of people and plug them in. I think it was in relation to he was talking about Groisberg and Chasing Stars and how people are very rarely as successful in different organizations because it is undervalued to the extent that they were able to leverage their network in one
Yep.
place that isn't so easy to then build and leverage at the speed required to perform, assimilate first and then perform in another organization. And again, it's a way in which the answer of how do we develop people to perform at scale
Yep.
using just vast suites of generic content isn't the answer, because it's not answering the right question. That's answering the how do we get a little bit of everything in a platform question. But I'm
Yep.
afraid that doesn't answer any of the how do you do enough of the right stuff in our organization in order to be successful as quickly as possible, to progress as quickly as we need you to, and then, as you said about the Grayson Army, keep enough of that proprietary information in our organization that's both usable and can be iterated over time so that we continue. So it's almost that helps to facilitate the not just the collection of information, because I think this is where I think we're on the verge of another great technological revolution, because knowledge management is very well intended, but the capture of information is very different from the retrieval in order to activate people. It's not good enough just to hoard that knowledge or
No.
know-how. It is in the
Yeah.
retrieval and application that all of its value is should be judged by.
Yeah. Well, and that's that's about to get ripely disrupted.
Big
Right. The
time.
whole knowledge management thing and what we're seeing with we don't I won't turn this in the direction of generative AI because I spent all last week in panels talking about that. But when we do think about some of these things, I mean, again, what you're talking about, and this is where people are going like, how does this all tie to skills? It's one of these things where it's like skills are far more dynamic than we like to attribute. And even just what we talked about here, a lot of times there's this assumption that, well, I wrote the job description down. Here's what you have to be able to do. And even those are usually very poorly written. So let's not even say that's good. But let's say the best job description in the world is in front of you and you go, here is exactly the tasks and duties you will do broken down by day, by hour. And you just have to do these things and you'll be successful in this job. There's a persistent belief that if we can just get to that, then people will be successful. And it's like, nope. You can hire a person that can nail every single one of those tasks out of the park and plop them into an organization, and they still can go down like the Hindenburg. It's this recognition that there's a whole lot more going on than just your ability to do a thing.
Yeah, and this is the beauty, and again, we won't turn this into a generative AI chat because we've got those whole collaborative learning bit to get to. But where I'm really excited, and I've coined this phrase, but someone else may have coined it before, so I'll give you some credit. But you know, like I've got the if we asked L&D what they need, they'd say faster courses, right? You know, like then I've attributed that to Henry Ford. Like, we think that the power of generative AI is providing faster courses, and it's totally the total misinterpretation of this incredible tool you've got right in front of you. What you've just described there, where this will real benefit solving the real problems in organizations. Number one, you'll get your data by asking for it, simply asking for it. So I don't know, you could just type in or ask. Show me all the people that have left at manager level in our organization that were promoted to manager in the last 12 months, and also show me where they worked. Bang.
And you'll get
now you've got it. Now you can go and help to solve those problems. Well, you were just saying there about a job description. A lot of the stuff we've done in learning and development has been top down because for two reasons, I believe. Number one, for control, because there's still, whether it be leadership or HR, there's still this basically flawed belief that we can control people.
Draconian. Let's just call it what it is. Draconian.
Exactly. Tell them how to behave. But the second one, it's in the absence of of believing that there is another way, that we can't possibly be doing things bottom up. Because every time I talk about doing stuff bottom up, people go, "Oh, what? You ask people what their learning needs are?" I'm going, no. Like this again. This is learning and development applying.
Are you saying we ask them what courses they want? No, that's not what we're saying.
I know it's completely nuts, isn't it? But it's about these tools that people will use to recognize the jobs that they're expected to do in the organizations and their ability to deliver the results, and then bring them off the page so that people are guided and supported to be doing more of the right stuff. People going, well, that doesn't sound like learning and development. Where's the course? You go, imagine a world where there isn't one. The way I describe it, it's like 10-pin bowling. That when you go into a 10-pin bowling alley for the very first time, if you're going to pick up a ball, and if I said to you, your job is to hit those pins, and I will give you a significant amount of money for every pin that you hit, like, so it's like a job then. Okay, so you give me the ramp thing, and you put the lane right in, and so I just throw the ball down, and I start hitting the pins every time and going, this is pretty good. I wouldn't mind challenging myself. So you take the ramp away and you throw the ball, and after a little while you want to challenge yourself, but you're not. But the risk, there's no risk to either you or the environment by removing those gently. Before you know it, you're going like a pro because you're watching other people around you performing like that. And I see that is the benefit when we're talking about the role of corporate learning as opposed to education. It isn't just it's no benevolent act trying to make better, stronger, more intelligent people. It's to help more adaptable people with like to give them the potential, but more often than not, it's the tools in order to do the thing that they're expected to do, because we believe that if they do enough of the right thing, they'll get the right results. And I think that when we stop thinking about using this really smart technology to do this really dumb thing, then I think we can achieve a great deal. And I'll just add one more part to that, because and I think this bursts the bubble of where we think generative AI is going to help L&D. So L&D think, well, we'll create faster courses, because just imagine what we could do is do a communication skills course for a tech company, right? And then it goes, you tell me why anything you ask generative AI to do is going to be better than the person who's doing the job asks in their specific context. That bursts the bubble. You don't need somebody far away from the work asking the questions that they think people might be asking, when generative AI could do that. And again, that's where and even that's dumbing it down, but it's in the potential to really come bottom up and help guide and support people to do more of the right stuff. And that's when you turn it inwards, and then you use it like Microsoft's got Copilot, and it becomes a really smart buddy.
And we could finally get rid of all those Excel courses out of our LMS
system. The biggest waste of any L&D budget in the last 30 years.
But what's funny about it, and I will say, I do think there's a false dichotomy in the sense that you have to choose between like truly caring about the well-being and goodness of your employees and getting them to do their job really well. Because this to me is one of the things that I see all the time in people, is like, when people feel like they're winning and they're doing their job well, there is a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment and engagement that comes with this. And so sometimes I hear these debates of like, it's all about performance, or and it's like, what? They are not separate from each other. And we need to stop thinking they are, because then we end up thinking we have to make trade-offs on one or the other. And it's like, we don't. If you actually get this right, you win in both categories.
Yeah, that's right. The most important thing I think we can do is help to improve people's prospects, but on their clock, not ours. Like, so people are there in a job through choice or through limited choices. But if we give them the opportunity to improve their prospects, which means their pay, their conditions, their security, their career, whatever is right for them, I think that is the most important part. But I think we do that by helping them for the primary reasons they're here. And where I see that going massively wrong, Christopher, is with the whole wellness movement around corporate learning. I can't stand it. And one of the reasons I can't stand it is because what isn't being admitted is a big problem of your well-being is being created by your organization and your inability to either navigate it or get it. But hey, do some mindful. We've got Headspace and change your diet. Maybe go for a walk, but not too far, because you're only allowed 15 minutes for lunch, and then come back. Like really, what you should imagine. We were opening up the culture and going, this is what goes on, and do you know what? This is what causes the overwhelm. There was a little bit in there that there's a big.
No, I see where you're getting with it. So I love these when we can get into like a little bit of back and forth, which we always do, which is why I love our conversation. Because what you're getting at, there's a component of that I agree with, which is, yes, I think sometimes, and I see this, and this is one of my biggest issues with DEI efforts and well-being efforts, is they're often just trying to shroud the problem with this false masquerade. And it's like, hey, your job sucks and we're not doing anything to make it better, but like, go take a walk, just not too long. Like, and then and it's like, no, you're trying to just numb the painful reality of things. And that's not actually
You're saying helping. It's on me. Yeah, you're saying is it's all within my realm of control. Here's some stuff. Off you go, sort it out.
We're not going to change anything, but you just go, de-stress and do what you got to do so that you can put up with the pain. And, I think you see the same thing with DE&I. We're not really going to be a more equitable or diverse culture, but like we're going to create some things that make us feel good about it. And hopefully that's going to change at least the perception. And I think it's one of these, again, there's a bit of a false dichotomy, because it's like the reality is work, sometimes it sucks. Like, and that's just the reality of the complexity of organizations. And so I do think that there are times where strategies and helping people understand, okay, there are certain things you can control and there are certain things you can't. So how do you cope with those things that are outside of your control in a productive way
Yeah.
so you don't lose your mind? Like,
Yeah.
okay, value to that to a degree, but to your point, can you go off the rails and be like, hey, maybe we can solve our awful workplace culture by adding bean bags and a coffee maker to the lounge? Like,
But
no.
the other way, so like, I mean, and I'm not saying that an organization needs to bear all, but you mentioned it earlier. When you feel like you're winning at work, you feel great. And do you know what? The environment doesn't have to be the best for you to feel
No.
good about winning at work either.
Yeah.
And you don't have to win while others are losers either. I mean, it's even
No.
better if you're all winning together because there's job security and and good pay
That's
that comes
another one
with
of those
that.
false dichotomies. For me to
Yeah.
win, someone has to lose. And it's like,
No, it doesn't
no.
have to be. But again, but you have to be focusing on what it means to be successful in any given organization at any given time. And learning and development can play a really pivotal role in
Huge role.
uncovering what that actually means, and then working with people who are surfing the waves, recognizing why it is that some people
Yeah.
aren't winning. And again, it's not about creating a happy, content workplace.
No.
You're paid by the paymasters. It is around performance and productivity, but everybody benefits from this. But you
Yes.
have to be solving problems and not
Yes.
addressing perceived problems like no one's using our learning tech. How do we change the learning culture? How do it's like I don't.
Well, and I made a LinkedIn post the other week about this where I said so often what learning has become, corporate learning has become a burden,
Mm,
cleverly disguised as a way of developing people. And it's like, no,
mm,
actually we're layering bricks in on their back going like,
yeah.
hey, we're developing you. And it's like, this, I can barely make it to the end of the day. And now you're
Mm,
telling me that I've got to do this other stuff that I'm not seeing any relevance. It's not helping me take bricks off my back. You're
yeah.
just stacking more on top of it. And we can do better than that. That's
Mm.
the thing.
Yeah, first of all, we've got to believe that we do, but we've also got to take a look in the mirror sometimes and say
Yes,
that
we do.
some of the reason that people are telling us they don't have time or they're not committed to doing this, or we're seeing our investment in learning and development not being appreciated. We do have to look in the mirror and say maybe it is on us,
Yeah.
and that
That's a hard look in the mirror, but it's an important one to take
yeah,
because the reality is people make time for things that are important to them.
that's right.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so let's let's transition this one a little bit because we've talked about this collaborative piece and I think
Mm,
hopefully anybody listening or watching by now you should be inspired. Hopefully we've checked that box for you, right? Like that there is a better way. It is possible. The
mm,
technology's there and you can do these things. But let's start talking some of the brass tacks about this because this is not, again, coming from two people who have taken some serious lashings trying to drive change. This is not an easy change to make. Like it's one
no,
thing to say collaborative learning, like it's great. It's another thing to actually get your organization to change the way they're doing things. And not only your organization, but if I've seen anything over the years, sometimes your L&D teams can be one of the
mm,
hardest groups of people to make the shift because this can almost be perceived as we're taking away from them. And it's like, well, we're not, but I
mm,
can see if you're thinking that this is, well, but my job is I make great courses. And now you're saying I don't do that anymore. And it's like, yeah, kind of that is what we're
mm.
saying, but that's not taking away your relevance.
Yeah, yeah, and I'd say that that there is an element of the change, but I don't think it takes too much convincing either way. I think I do recognise that a lot of learning and development people have identity wrapped up in what they do. As you said, I design this or I deliver that. I work with people, but what this is about, the collaborative learning piece, is recognising that that instead of our goal being learning, like the delivery, the design, the measurement of. Uh, it is around people being equipped to do the stuff they're expected to do in the organization. It just brings the goal closer to home. So the rationale for collaborative learning is that we are performing in this organization, in our organization, the one that perhaps isn't as usable. But if we are going to take this from an academic exercise that people consume and then they are competent, to one where they engage in a continual learning process in order to get the right stuff done at our organization, then we have to admit that we need internal resources in order to do that, both in the analysis, enough analysis, because it doesn't have to be paralysis by analysis, but enough analysis to understand where the points of friction are, so we know what to create and what not to create, who to bring in, and again, using smart technology, lighter touch, so we're not creating a new job for some of the most in-demand subject matter experts in our organization, but we can also iterate over time. So our goal is usefulness rather than the retention of generic stuff to be applied at some undetermined time in the future. It's about doing the work, but for the purposes of not just performance today, but to improve the prospects of people tomorrow, because we don't unpick the work from the learning.
So let's tackle this twofold, because I will just tell you, having tried to turn around and succeeding sometimes while getting my face kicked in other times, this is a skill change even for L&D. I mean, this is a dynamic skill change, because if you're an organization that's going from, we are a courseware developer firm, to we are a consultative product team trying to develop a product designed around this using learning principles to do it well, I can just say from experience, there are a lot of skills that in our field we have to upgrade to do this well, because even dynamically, the way you approach that situation is fundamentally different. And so I'm curious, looking at this, because we'll address kind of the employee piece and how they get included in this, because I'm curious on this one. But so bringing some of these people in, because building those consultative skills, and I think even some of the best IDs that I've known over the years, they're really good at building, but they aren't always leaning into that consulting side of, no, you stop worrying about the doing piece. Your job is to bring the best out of other people, and they can make the shift. It's not that they can't, but it's an intentional effort.
Yeah, and I'd say that there's, we can't let the perfect be the what's that phrase?
Progress in front of perfection.
Progress is important. So the really important thing is that we make a start, and we get something to work. I think one of the most important things that we ever do in learning and development is challenge ourselves around efficacy. So I always say, you don't throw the baby out with bathwater. So keep stuff works, right? How do you know that works, right? But whatever your measure is, if it works, keep it.
By whatever measure it is that you're defining success, if it's doing that, then fine.
Exactly. But let's start with something that's not working. And how about we just try something a different way?
Yes.
We don't tell the world we're going to do something different. We just try this a different way. Now, if we take a step back and say, look, we're not talking about piloting a platform or an approach here. When it comes to collaborative learning, that's just a way of saying to your organization that we've got all these great people here, and instead of just trying to fill people's heads up with this stuff, and by the way, we're not getting a huge amount of engagement anyway over there, and we can't really draw the line between the investment that we've made and people being equipped and are actually achieving more. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend more time connecting our people, and we've got smart tech that helps us to do that. And by the way, we're not taking away your suites of content if needed, because I'm a huge believer. Over time you may, but there's a tactical element of L&D leadership that I think is really important. And you'll know this, Christopher. If you don't have a suite of online content, people will ask you, do you have something on this? Do you have something on that? And you'll
spend a whole lot of time making things.
Exactly. You need to almost keep them at bay, because people will always tell you what you haven't got. So it's almost as if as a hygiene factor, you need to have enough things. But but when you've then got the
Yeah.
time and
To keep
attention
the noise
to
down.
exactly, because otherwise, for all sorts of
I
reasons, we're
totally
not
get
just
it. I
we're not
know
just talking
exactly what you're talking about.
but everybody kind of knows what that's for anyway. And I
Yep.
always say that you listen to the phrase when someone says to you, "Have you got anything on presentations?" The word "anything" is the key word there, because if anything will
I
do,
just need a thing to fill a
yeah, just
hole.
boosh, off you go. I've got loads of that. Go, you crack on, and you tell me when you do. Right. So that's how important it is.
Yeah.
Anything will do. But then you've got the stuff over here, and this is the skill stuff. We've got a skills gap right now, and this isn't getting better. I think it's you've got a similar case in the US that we've got over here. We've got more job vacancies than we've got people to fill it over here. We're not going to hire ourselves out of this skills problem. We've got
No, we're not.
technology advancing faster than you like, and we've got Brexit as well. That's kind of told
Okay.
the world that we're open for business, but you can't work here to do it. So we've got to develop our own people. We've got this burning platform here, and we have to. Right? If we were going to go risky again and go, well, we'll just rip and replace that last thing we spent a load of money on. I'm not sure it got us any further towards our closing our skills gap, but it was interactive. Again, crack on if
People
that's where
gave
you
it
want to go.
5 stars.
Yeah, exactly. But if your organization now is relying on others, and there's a team sitting right there who are dedicated to preparing people for work today and tomorrow, learning and development. If you need to make it work, then you better be preparing people to do the jobs, not just do the learning. And I think that's the bit where we can convince ourselves. And I don't think it's a big sell to convince stakeholders.
No, and I think and you went to where I was hoping you would go with this, which is there's a lot of nuance and complexity to this. And it's not like you just snap your fingers and overnight everything went from this and magically now you're over here. Because really, even quite frankly, that's not even the best solution for this. Like, not everything needs to be in this model. And I think what you're getting at is for orgs who are going, okay, I hear you. We want to do this. It's about prioritization and identifying where are the greatest opportunities to get started with this, because it's not, should we do it? To me, anybody who says, should we do this? I would go, that's the wrong. The answer is yes. The answer to that is yes. It's how. And I think how is helping people understand where to get started, which is don't flip off all the things that you have and dump them and go, all right, we're starting back from ground zero. And now we're going to redo everything we ever did. You will kill yourself.
Yeah.
But like you said, being able to say, all right, we got these things. Yeah, we're going to get the request where somebody goes, I'll take just about anything, literally whatever you got on this. Okay, fine. Don't waste your time and energy on those things. Push them over there and then say, where are these critical skill problems?
Yeah.
These gaps that we have, and then let's lean on this and let's do it differently because we actually have an opportunity to do it. And don't just plug that hole with what you've always done in the past.
No, and I think that you make a really good point, because it's not skills for skills' sake; it's skills for an end, right? So it's really easy to buy into. Your vendor's got a skills report that says in your industry and in your location, these are the skills. And coincidentally, first of all, Christopher, you can have that report for free. But coincidentally, I've got a library of that. So I can sell you the solution to the problem I've just given you for free, right? And so, brilliant, right? So and you haven't have to do any analysis, and really, all we can connect this generic content to people's job descriptions, or how you've got them set up in HR, in your HR system, and also give them more generic stuff based on what they tell us they like, and that means they can do future jobs. The only thing that doesn't stand up to is scrutiny. Now what? But so what? But
Speaks well from the stage, though, David. I don't know.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But when you get down to brass tacks, you plug this thing in and go, I thought by reading that they'd be able to do this job. But that's what it comes down to. This is skills for what end? And it is tasks and jobs, right? And this is what it comes down to. But how can somebody do a job in your organization if they know nothing about your organization? So this is where it plugs in. And yeah, you don't have all the ideas and insight and skills required in your organization, but with just that, you don't have any of the cultural application within that. So you do need some kind of collaborative element in your organization, first of all, to solve the real problems. There are people coming into your organization, they are not assimilated, and we're losing far too many good people. And this the period of assimilation is too long. So
Way too long.
there's exactly. And then there's helping people through transitions, because we're expecting people to move amongst teams as well, not just because the organization requires it. It's because we're losing good people because they're stuck in dead-end jobs and we've not either designed their roles or designed a path for them,
or we're
and
asking
then
them to do their old job while they continue doing the new one. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics.
exactly. We need to help people as they transition. That's when they're most open to learning, and when they need our help most. But we can only help them if we can attach the cultural element of their transition to the technical element. Again, that's where the collaborative part comes in. But there is so much change. How much? I mean, you mentioned generative AI. I'm not sure there's been a conversation in learning and development in the time that I've been in learning and development that's been so all-consuming. It's because roles are going to change. So there's going to be enforced adaptation. You're talking there about how you become more consultative and affecting the performance of work rather than just the implementation or delivery of learning. We are all going through periods of enforced adaptation. And how do you do that? Not by reading just generic content and then going, oh yeah, I get that now. This is how I do the job. You do it by helping people to assimilate in the work, in the job.
Well, and what's funny about that is, and I think this is where sometimes it misses, is that are there individuals who are really good at this, who can take something really general, think deeply about it, and figure out how to connect all the dots, right? I mean, there absolutely are.
Yeah.
But it's inefficient, because even the people who can do it really well, you're leaving a lot of like unnecessary work for them to do, because it's like, well, you've got to deconstruct all this stuff and then reconstruct it in a way that you might even not get it right. But like, okay, I guess we'll just but that's also not the norm. And I think that's one of the things where going all the way back to when we talked about well-being. This is one of those burdens that often gets stacked on people, is that it's like, well, it's, you're responsible for your own career, make it your own. And it's like, well, we've given you the basics and it's your job to do everything else. And that's an overwhelming task for the vast majority of people to go, so you've given me instruction 1, 2, and 3 of 100, and I'm supposed to figure out the rest. And my success is 100% dependent on my ability to figure that out. That is crushing for the average person.
Yeah, completely. We also give that to line managers as well. And we say, so it's down to the individual to transfer it back, or we say it's the line managers. The only people that we never question and say, I wonder if we could get closer to them, is L&D. Why? I always say that at the end of a training course, like you've just done a 3-day training course, and then the last part, it's almost like you're carrying out a big tray of tea on tiny little expensive china cups, and you go, if you don't take this back to the workplace, if you don't get your line managers to help, if you don't do your development plan, if the C-suite isn't involved, it's all these things, all these reasons why this fragile thing didn't work. It's not me, right? I've just delivered this stuff at you for 3 days, right? There's no way you can remember it, but it's not down to me.
I've put all the fragile china teacups on the platter for you.
It's down to
don't drop a single one.
But again, so if we just asked ourselves the questions, if this is so fragile and prone to not making a difference, I wonder if we should be doing something else. So, and it's a question we ask ourselves, and everybody's organization is going to be different. But this is why I think that we, as learning and development, why don't we just take the moral high ground, right? It's not about whether an individual is open to change and can remember enough and sees the opportunity to apply things. Why don't we stand for stuff that works? Why don't we stand for actually preparing people as they come into our organization and staying and being successful? Why don't we hold ourselves accountable for line managers actually being ready and guided and supported to be doing enough of the right stuff so that their teams perform at the required level and they remain healthy and engaged? And when it comes to the skills gaps, why don't we hold ourselves accountable to people being actually able to do other jobs rather than just providing stuff so that the self-directed learner and their ever attentive line manager does that work, because I think that's what we're in organizations to do. This is too serious, I think,
It's
for us
way
now
too
to take a
serious.
step back.
I mean, the
and
stakes
say,
are higher than they've ever been.
yeah,
The stakes are extremely high.
but the tools are available now. I think that back
That's
in the
just it.
day, like back in the day when I was in training and development, like all we had was the classroom and an
Walk
overhead
to work
projector.
uphill both ways.
With the bike on the cobbled streets.
Yeah, 8 feet
But
of snow.
but the only thing we had was the overhead projector. That
It's
was the
true.
technology, and
Yeah.
our ability to be in a room for enough people to see if we could affect a change. And now it's not the case, and it's not only is our remit broader and a more geographically spread. Plus, you've got more people working remotely. Those things haven't really changed the game for us. But what has is our ability to truly affect how the work is done and therefore the
Yep.
results. And we've got an opportunity to do this now before it's critical, because if we wait until it is critical, I've got a funny feeling that these tools that we're going to have are going to be other people are going to be able to apply this perhaps with more effectiveness than us, because they won't be burdened by the legacy of what learning and development used to be.
No.
But again, it goes back to what we were talking about before. It's about affecting the work, and it's about actually plugging the skills gap. And as I said there, this doesn't start with plugging in a platform. It starts with holding ourselves accountable to efficacy, to actual change, planned change.
Well, and what I like about what you said on this, and I think this ties back to 360 nicely, is the fact that this is part of the reason why I do this show, is that there's a lot of folks, and not to no fault of their own, still operating off outdated intel on what's
Yeah.
possible with tech. And I get it. The market's moving fast. Tech is changing all the time, and it can just feel like I'm so busy just keeping my head down. I don't have time to understand what's out there. But this is where, I use this as an opportunity to lift people's heads a bit and go, hey, look, I get it. There was a day, as much as we joke about it, where it was walking uphill both ways through 8 feet of snow and pushing. And so as a result, you just said, this is the best that I can do with what I've got. But what's beautiful about what's happening with the technology is those rules are changing, and the things that were impossible. And I think looking at LMSs and what 360 Learning is doing, where you would go, LMS is just, they only work this way. It's like, no, they don't.
No, they don't.
Actually, no, they don't. There are players out there that are actually fundamentally doing things differently, that is creating these things that you would go, well, I'd love to do more collaborative learning. Unfortunately, we just have no way to support and manage and maintain and actually do. Okay, well, that's actually not a problem with the right tech. And even going back to the generative AI contact, there are a lot of things that this is going to free us up to do. And I mean, I guess you could use it to shell out a bunch more digital garbage into your org. But to me, that's a complete miss of what's possible with that technology.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think a good acid test of whether you've got the right learning tech is ask who's doing the work. Are you working for the tech, or is the tech working for you? I know that in my Disney time, me and my team spent an inordinate amount of time trying to drive traffic towards the platform, because no one was doing that of their own volition, and it was to justify the expenditure on the platform. We'd given up hope of it actually doing what we bought it for, and now it was just to justify the spend. The role of LMS administrator, again, you've got people working for the tech. Where you've got good tech, if that feels like extra team members, and I don't mean just those delivering content, but I mean the eradication of admin, that you've got smart campaigns running, whether it means in the development of content, it's like you've got a really smart person who's made a good first pass at that as well. Compliance, another one, for example. Who should be running any manual compliance elements in their roles right now? That could be fully automated with smart tech. So I think it's a really good acid test. If you've got people working for your tech, you've got outdated tech. If it feels like you're running with extra team members, you're on the right path. And if that's piqued your interest, you know where to come.
There you go. Hey, there you go. You close it with a plug. I like it. I like it. Well, David, as always, I always enjoy our conversations and appreciate you making the time. And for those of you watching and listening, hopefully this has just challenged you, which it should. If anything, that's a great starting point, is to challenge your thinking on what you thought you could do or what you thought you had to do or what the limitations are, to at least start exploring the possibilities. Because you're playing the long game here. And to your point, you don't want to wait until it's critical mass to be in a position where you're like, oh no. I mean, we saw that's what happened with the pandemic in many ways. It was like many orgs were not ready for that. And I think there's an opportunity to get in front of it. So thank you for making the time. It's always a pleasure, David. You're welcome back whenever. And thanks for being here with me.
Thanks, Christopher. I really enjoyed it.